and is one of those people that truly carries the Dharma in all of her actions. Reverend or Roshi, do you prefer Reverend or Roshi? I don't know the proper title.
Well, I guess it's technically Reverend, but I just tend to be Neti.
Perfect. Reverend Neti is the founding teacher for Twining Vine Zendo in Australia. It is a beautiful Zendo. They have sittings every day of the week, and there's a time zone calculator on her website. She has studied in the Soto lineage and received Dharma transmission from the founder of Santa Cruz Zen Center, and studied with Daniel Taragno and Sabana, and I can't pronounce Sabana's last name, so I'm going to just not.
Bizagi.
In Australia, and that's where she started her koan study in 2009. So she carries several lineages with her, and she's also a psychotherapist, so carries this work in the world as being a healer of wounds and somebody who tends to be willing to hear the cry of the world, even in her day job. So I'm grateful for you, Neti, for you being willing to share your practice with us and being here with us tonight. And I'll pass it to Gregory to ring you in. And then one small thing, just out of we've had a fairly informal time in Rocks and Clouds of just asking questions at random, and I'd like to ask us to listen with that sense of zazen silence that lets her words transform you. And there'll be a time for invited questions, not that you can't ask throughout if there's something that feels powerful or burning, but just to give that sense of respect for the teaching and the process. So we give her space to do that. And there'll be some time for questions probably at 8:10 or 8 o'clock, depending on how Neti wants to manage it. And I'll pass to Gregory to ring the bell, I think is how we do this.
No, we haven't rung the bell for the teachers talking. So we'll just pass it to Neti to please begin.
Okay, so just a clarification around my koan study. I started in 1996 and completed the koan study in 2009. Not that it matters, but just in case it's there on the record somehow. Probably actually, so that I think it's good for people to trust that it's good for it to take a long time and not to rush, and taking 20 years or 20 or 30 years is perfectly good for koan study. So I thought I would speak a little bit about a couple of passages from the Diamond Sutra, partly for my own benefit, because I don't tend to take passages out of the main sutras very often, but I thought I would do it today. So I'm going to start by reading a little bit from Reb Anderson, Tenshin Roshi's fairly recent book, Entering the Mind of Buddha, where he speaks a little about the Diamond Sutra, and he's referring to the part of the Diamond Sutra that our sixth ancestor, Hui Neng, was awakened by. The Diamond Sutra repeatedly expresses a somewhat surprising logical formulation to help bodhisattvas train in perfect wisdom. I call this the logic of perfect wisdom, or the logic of non-abiding mind. It could be stated this way. The very reason that A is precisely the reason that A is not A. Therefore, we speak of A. And I'm going to come back through this paragraph and say a few things, but I'll just read it through first. The Buddha expresses such startling logic in this scripture in a discussion of harmonies of Buddha fields. He says that if a bodhisattva says, I will bring about harmonious Buddha fields, he or she speaks untruthfully. And how so? Harmonious Buddha fields, as no harmonious Buddha fields, have been taught by the Buddha. Therefore, the Buddha speaks of harmonious Buddha fields. The teaching here is that there is a reason that things come to be. A thing comes to be itself by the pivotal support of everything that is not itself. Things do not come to be by or of themselves, but through the support of everything other than themselves. And this is the piece that I'm really wanting to focus on in tonight's talk, that they come about by the support of everything other than themselves, this particular point. So we're going to go into that in a little more detail. All phenomena are nothing more or less than the support of everything other than that phenomenon. Therefore, the very reason a thing is itself is precisely the reason that it is not itself. This is the logic of non-abiding mind. Right after the Buddha demonstrates this logic of non-abiding mind in speaking of harmonious Buddha fields, he strongly encourages bodhisattvas to give life to a mind of no abode. Such a mind does not abide anywhere or in anything. It does not abide in sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles, or mind objects. This is the mind of perfect wisdom, a mind that does not dwell in anything. Layman Lu, the future sixth ancestor, awoke upon hearing this section of the Diamond Sutra. And then Reb is speaking about himself here. He says, several years ago, a generous bodhisattva offered me a small temple in which to practice and teach perfect wisdom. When I was asked to name the temple, wanting to honor the Diamond Sutra and the sixth ancestor, I suggested naming it No Abode. And of course, No Abode is in Marin County, very close to where many of you live. And that is the temple where Coach and I did the transmission ceremony. So I have a very strong love of that temple and of just the term No Abode. So going back up to the start, the very reason that A is precisely the reason that A is not A. Therefore, we speak of A. And a couple of examples that have actually been very helpful in my life to kind of try and make sense of this so I can feel it rather than just try to memorize it and work with it cognitively, was an experience I had many years ago. In fact, it was when Sabana first was given transmission, and there was a conversation about whether to call her Roshi or not. And she, of course, didn't mind one way or the other. But some people were saying, well, we can call her Roshi because she's had transmission. Let's do that. Let's just call her Roshi. You know, it's not a big deal. It just feels like a good thing to do. Let's do that. And other people were saying, I don't think we should. It's too big a title. We shouldn't use that title. And my sense was, when we understand that there's no such thing as a Roshi, when we really understand that, then we can use the word quite lightly, not disrespectfully and not too casually, but we can use that word coming from a light place because we understand that there is no such thing as Roshi. And so therefore it was kind of good to just call her that. And it felt like a lovely thing for Australia. It was the first Diamond Sangha Roshi in the country, and it just happened to also be a woman too. And it felt a little also that being strongly averse to using that word was actually giving that word too much power, was making the word too concrete, was sort of ratifying that word too much and the concept too much. So it was with a lightness that one could say, let's do that. We're going to call her Roshi. You know, there was a lightness in that. So that's kind of an example of an application of seeing that something is made up of everything other than itself. And another example that I can't remember where I heard this. It might have been when I was back in art school a long time ago, or it could have been somewhere through Dharma discussion. And so I can't tell you for sure if this is actually completely accurate in terms of chemistry, but I'll describe this to you and you'll see that it's lovely whether it's 100% accurate or not. So if you have a surface, say, that's red, the reason it looks red is because that surface absorbs all the colors of the spectrum except red, and it reflects the red back. Mike is nodding, so at least one person has heard this before. So the thing that we see that is red is everything other than red. And it's just wonderful. If that is actually accurate in terms of the chemistry, that's wonderful. But it's also a very helpful way for us to understand that this applies to everything. that the thing that you see is an appearance, and the thing that it appears to be is made up of everything other than the thing that we think it is. Like everything other than the thing that it appears to be. That there's no red at all. Because then, of course, you just apply that logic to all of the things that all the things that make up something. Each of those things are not themselves. So all of the other colors that the surface absorbs and doesn't reflect back, each of those colors also are made up of all the other colors except the one that they are reflecting back. So we can apply this to everything, and in that process there's nothing that we can really get a hold of. So before going further, I'd like to read a little bit from a translation of the Diamond Sutra. The section that Reb refers to in his article, it's section 10, and I'm reading from this copy of the Diamond Sutra and the Sutra of Huineng, translated by Price and Wong Mulan Ian. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. So I'll just read this section out. Buddha said, "Subhuti, what do you think? In the remote past, when the Tathagata was with Dipankara Buddha, did he have any degree of attainment in the good law? No, world-honored one. When the Tathagata was with Dipankara Buddha, he had no degree of attainment in the good law. Subhuti, what do you think? Does a bodhisattva set forth any majestic Buddha lands? No, world-honored one. Wherefore? Because setting forth majestic Buddha lands is not a majestic setting forth. This is merely a name." The Buddha continued, "Therefore, Subhuti, all bodhisattvas, lesser and great, should develop a pure, lucid mind, not depending upon sound, flavor, touch, odor, or any quality. A bodhisattva should develop a mind that alights upon nothing whatsoever, and so should he or she establish it. Subhuti, this may be likened to a human frame as large as the mighty Mount Suru. What do you think? Would such a body be great?" Subhuti replied, "Great indeed, world-honored one. This is because Buddha has explained that no body is called a great body." So when it says a bodhisattva should develop a mind that alights upon nothing whatsoever, when we see the world through this no, through mu, when we understand through no, we then can function through yes. We can function through wu. That's the bodhisattva side. The emptiness, wisdom side is no. Everything is mere appearance. It is made up of everything other than itself. I think this is a particularly beautiful piece in the Diamond Sutra. It is made up of everything other than itself. It's not just dependent upon other things, which in the end gets you to the same place, but the particular emphasis here, it's made up of everything other than itself. It absolutely is not itself. It is not what it appears. When we have that wisdom and we're not forgetting it, then we function with yes, paradoxically. And the reason I think that we can function with yes, say yes to the cries of the world, say yes to the requests of the world. The reason we can say yes is because we are not functioning from delusion. When we function from delusion, it's exhausting, it's tiring, because it's not in accord with reality. It takes up energy to be functioning not in accord with reality. When we really understand the no, our energy is free, our energy is free up. And in that freedom, we can say yes and yes and yes. And of course, sometimes we say no just because we have to look after our bodies and we have to feed it and make sure it sleeps and so on. But our overall bodhisattva, bodhicitta energy is yes. You say yes. There's another part I'd like to read. This is called Real Designation is Undesignate, section 9. It's a little longer, but I'd like to read the whole thing. Subhuti, what do you think? Does a disciple who has entered the stream of the holy life say within him or herself, I obtain the fruit of a stream entrant? Subhuti said, no, world-honored one. Well, wherefore? Because stream entrant is merely a name. There is no stream entering. The disciple who pays no regard to form, sound, odor, taste, touch, or any quality is called a stream entrant. Subhuti, what do you think? Does an adept who is subject to only one more rebirth say to him or herself, I obtain the fruit of a once to be reborn? Subhuti said, no, world-honored one. Wherefore? Because once to be reborn is merely a name. There is no passing away nor coming into existence. The adept who realizes this is called once to be reborn. Subhuti, what do you think? Does a venerable one who will never more be reborn as a mortal say within him or herself, I obtain the fruit of a non-returner? Subhuti said, no, world-honored one. Wherefore? Because non-returner is merely a name. There is no non-returning, hence the designation non-returner. Subhuti, what do you think? Does a holy one say within him or herself, I have obtained perfective enlightenment? Subhuti said, no, world-honored one. Wherefore? Because there is no such condition as that called perfective enlightenment. World-honored one, the Holy One of perfective enlightenment said to him or herself, such am I. He or she would necessarily partake of the idea of an ego entity, a personality, a being, or a separated individuality. World-honored one, when the Buddha declares that I excel among holy men in the yoga of perfect quiescence, in dwelling in seclusion, and in freedom from passions, I do not say within myself, I am a holy one of perfective enlightenment, free from passions. World-honored one, if I said within myself, such am I, you would not declare Subhuti finds happiness abiding in peace and seclusion in the midst of the forest. This is because Subhuti abides nowhere. Therefore he is called Subhuti, joyful abider in peace, dweller in seclusion in the forest. I love at the end that Subhuti, in speaking of himself, is able to say, this is because Subhuti abides nowhere. Wherefore he is called Subhuti, joyful abider in peace, dweller in seclusion in the forest. He can say that because he knows there's no such thing. That's how come he can say it. When we understand in this way, we can play, be playful, be light-hearted with, be wholehearted with all the appearances of the world. And when we do that, we don't leave a trace, we don't leave stains, we don't leave a mark. We don't get hooked, we don't get defensive, we don't get fixated. We can be light in spirit and engage wholeheartedly with the suffering world and engage wholeheartedly with the beautiful world. It's a beautiful world. It's a painful and beautiful world. And we can engage wholeheartedly with it when we understand that each thing that appears before us is made up of every other thing other than itself. It's an extraordinary sense of abundance in every single thing that we see. So I actually have, I got this out. This is the teaching stick that Danielle gave me in 2009. And it's a beautiful piece of natural wood that's been polished. And I can look at this and love this teaching stick because it's not really a teaching stick. It's everything other than a teaching stick. The whole universe is here in this appearance of a teaching stick. And I think this this way of seeing the world is partly why, particularly since Buddhism moved into China, that we've developed such a reverence for objects, such a reverence for the non-sentience, because in all the non-sentience, in fact, all the sentience abide. This stick appears like, I can't think of the word. It just appears as if it's just not stationary. There's a word I'm trying to get, but I can't get it to come to mind. But actually, it's really alive with all the sentient beings of the universe are alive in this stick. And one last thing I'd like to say and then open it up for discussion is these teachings can sound very abstract or sound lofty, but their application is completely in ordinary everyday life. And just this morning, I had this great example of it for myself, which I'm kind of grateful for. Someone nearby had planted some fresh grass on their lawn, and some car had driven over the corner of it, which obviously wouldn't be very nice for the newly sprouted grass. And they said to me, you know, it's really important not to drive your car on this newly planted grass, with the strong implication that it had been me that had done this, had driven onto this grass. And I just sort of said, oh, absolutely, I'll be incredibly careful not to do that. And it was kind of nice to not have to go, it wasn't me, I didn't drive on the grass, it wasn't me. There's no need to do that. When we really understand that in that person who is a little upset, which is fair enough, it's newly growing grass, that they can contain me. They contain everybody else. And I am empty of nettiness. I'm empty of nettiness. So there's no need to defend, no need to say it wasn't me, just no need whatsoever. And then as it so happened, a few hours later, the spouse came up and said to me, did my husband mention to you about not driving your car on the grass? So I got a second opportunity to go, yes, they did. Absolutely, I'll be very careful not to drive on the grass. So the application of these ancient teachings is right there in our absolutely ordinary life. Totally everyday things is where we apply these teachings, not in lofty situations, just in the moments that we never can predict that just arrive in front of us, where often those situations, when they arise, they generate in us sometimes a sense of separateness. And there's so many situations that generate a sense of separateness. You there, me here. I feel slightly put on the spot or criticized or blamed or whatever it might be, or in danger, and we concretize around that. And so the more of these teachings are really that we contemplate them just as we move through our everyday life, the more we contemplate them, actively contemplate them. I really think contemplation is a wonderful practice. Zazen is a wonderful practice, and contemplation is a wonderful practice. And we can contemplate as lay people, as you know, our mind is thinking all day, every day anyway. We might as well turn it towards the teachings while it's thinking, might as well turn it that way. And then these moments arise uninvited, and there we can just in that moment suddenly realize, oh, in this moment, I am not attaching to myself as a separate person and to them as a separate person. I'm not doing that. In this moment, I can drop all of that and say, absolutely, yes, or whatever is required. So I think that is all I feel I need to say right now, and I would love to hear how that lands with you and anything you would like to add or ask. Just put your hand up. Mike.
I really am just incredibly touched by this. Everything is itself because of everything else, or everything is itself because it's not itself. There's something very powerful about that, and I can feel places where I walk through my day and I become Mike and you become Neti, and there becomes a place to defend. And there's a poem from I think a feast that goes, "Isn't all conversation just an attempt to defend a crumbling fort?" And let it fall, and so, do you have any advice for me in places when I notice that I'm hooked, but I'm not quite open enough to be in that, to be able to drop into that I am you and me? Any advice for kind of opening skillfully the kind of the heart?
Well, I think I would just be really appreciative of the fact that you notice that you do get hooked, because that's I think the moment of growth. That's the moment of deepening and practice. Just like in Zazen, when we're sitting there and our mind has wandered maybe for a little longer than we kind of had hoped into thinking about something, and we go, wow, I think I've been maybe 10 or 15 minutes on that. That moment is the sacred moment. That's the moment filled with grace, is that exact moment that we notice. So I think we don't need to do more than that, is just notice, wow, I was a little defensive. My heart rate went up just then. I think that's all that's required, because my sense is that our deep Buddha nature desires to be well and desires to be connected to community. And so all we really need to do is notice when we're not doing that. And that frees us to just naturally move towards that sort of that wise sense of total interpenetration between us and all other beings. Our Buddha nature wants to do that. It's only our delusion that gets in the way. So simply noticing that moment of delusion is all I think that's required. There's nothing we have to add, just notice the moment. I hope that feels helpful.
Thank you. Very helpful. I'm grateful for that, teacher.
Neti,
Scott.
I just want to say thank you for that wonderful teaching, and I found it extremely to the point of my own practice, because I'm dealing with these things in my practice, and I'm working with Mu, as you know, and I found your description of this of the no of Mu and the yes of Mu to be really wonderful kind of clarification in any way. And but in general, I just want to thank you for a really wonderful deep teaching. So thank you.
It's all there in the Diamond Sutra. And this copy, actually, Scott, you gave this to me. This is the copy you gave me before I went on my solitary retreat, and I read it, while I was there. It's wonderful. Katie?
Jay has his hand up.
Oh, okay. Jay.
Katie, go ahead. Go. You already did. Let's be with it.
Katie was unmuted.
I just butt in. I didn't even put my hand up. Sorry. Yeah, Neti, thank you for the talk. I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about the practice of contemplation and how contemplation can move into being incorporated in the body or just embodied. It always seems to me like a cerebral, intellectual kind of thing. like understanding what you were talking about in a certain way, but how, this is kind of like maybe Mike's question too, you know, how do we, using contemplation, become embody the knowledge, the insight?
I think one of the reasons I've loved koan studies so much over the years, and really do think it's particularly beneficial for lay practitioners, is because it encourages us to contemplate. At the very least, we need to memorize the koan that we're working on. So, you know, maybe many of you have done this. I remember, you know, I'd be driving my car, I'd have written on a slip of paper the case that I was working on, and at the traffic light, I would pick it up and think, now I've got the first line, the second line, I need to add the third line. So I'd be memorizing the third line, put that down, next traffic light, think I've got the third line, let me add the fourth line. So what I was doing while I was driving was actually thinking about the koan I was working on, which was probably a better thing to be doing than maybe thinking about something random. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the kind of random thoughts we have, as in what we're going to do when we get home, what to cook for dinner, what I should have said differently to one of my children. You know, there's nothing really wrong with those thoughts, but they're not necessarily deepening our understanding of reality. They're just thoughts that are within the realm of appearances in which we need to function. So what happened for me, and maybe there's a bit of a personality style that I have, but all of that koan training really just got me into a frame of mind where I would notice when my mind was just drifting on nothing in particular, and I would just sort of like gently kind of nudge it in, like, oh, let's get back to the Dharma, you know. And then whatever happened to be ripe for me, you know, different periods of time, different teachings have been more ripe. You know, I've been thinking about cause and effect or something. I might spend 6 months where that's really something I'm deeply contemplating, how profound that teaching is, you know, because I think we understand the teachings at one level, and then something happens, often in sesshin, I think it can happen, where we just go like, whoa, it just drops down an octave, you know. So just keeping on doing that, and then as if I naturally would get to a certain point of completion with that for that period of time, and then I might be thinking about impermanence, or, you know, the emptiness teachings, or like for a long time I got very, very interested in now and just how indestructible now is. And I just found myself, I'd be driving my car thinking like, here's now, and no one can take it away. You could bomb it. You could do whatever you like. It's not going to go away. No one can get rid of it. And that just became incredibly compelling for many months and over and over. And I think of some distant planet or star. It's now there. It's now there. It's now everywhere. Like you just going on and on like that, you know. So, and I think when we just do that, we get into the habit. It's just like we're shifting our habit of mind. And the way I think that shift happens is by just noticing, like what I was saying with Mike, you just notice that you're just thinking about ordinary things, which is fine. But say, maybe right now, actually, I prefer to contemplate some aspect of the Dharma. And then after a while, we don't even have to do that. It's just become our habit of mind. And I think when it's more our habit of mind, it's just really in the body. It just goes into the body. And then it just appears beautifully and spontaneously when someone says something to you and you don't get defensive. And then we can have that nice little feeling inside, like, oh, the teachings work. The teachings work. You don't have to try and make them work. They just spontaneously work.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jay.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for bringing this up. The idea of being hooked and catching yourself in that has been up for me. And being able to step back from it and not react and then let sort of the wisdom come through has been very, very moving, really, to be able to kind of keep with that. But then the other place that it's really gone to is when I'm working with a group of people and I see them going through that, I'm blaming you and I'm blaming that. And there's something in that grace to be able to just guide it in the way, as opposed to like to be able to understand everybody has something that they need to say, and it doesn't need to be this conflict, that we all are connected in a way, and an ability to, within my own being hooked, to be able to be sensitive to other people being hooked and being really gentle with that, right? And being able to gently show the way you did the grass, description is exactly that. It's like, you knew you didn't do that. We didn't have to get into that. We don't walk on the grass, right? We can just stay with that wisdom and let it be. And it is such a gift to see the peace come through that, and the lack of drain of energy, really. I mean, to me, that was so stunning. This concern with whether I'm hooking into is so draining and delusional, really. And to be able to step back from it is wonderful, but then also to kind of feel it all together, right? With everybody, we're all doing that, right? And to be able to just be, right? So, and it's interesting, but just knowing you're hooked, it doesn't mean it goes away, right? But then, as you mentioned too, just like with Zazen, with meditation, with contemplation, it's not sustainable, really. So anyway, thank you for bringing it up.
I think the more we do notice when we do get hooked, the less we do tend to get hooked. I do think that that's the natural direction that it goes in, but it doesn't mean it's linear. It can be in fits and starts and so on. And I think the other thing that's good about noticing this in ourselves and the suffering it causes us is it deepens our compassion for the difficulty that, as you say, virtually everybody struggles to some extent with self-identification.
Well, and thank you for bringing up the compassion piece, because that's what's coming about from it, to be able to just to feel that kind of heartfulness, really, right, for all, right? And
Yes.
and to be able to continue, whether it's a bright world or a difficult world or whatever it is, right? You can move on, right? And I think the other thing is, for me, the really way I feel it is, I don't know if I get triggered less, but I definitely know I'm not reacting to the trigger. So I hear the trigger and I can step back. And to me, that gives me patience when I'm working with everybody, and to allow them that as well, right? To not push on it, to be able to step back and allow whatever comes out, as opposed to, having to solve it or push it or blame or any of that piece. But I guess what I'm really trying to say is that the reactivity is really, really settling out, just because of the awareness, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you very much, Neti. It's when you were talking about how that something is created by everything except for itself. And I think one thing I just wanted to say that before this, Gene Bush gave the talk at the Santa Cruz Zen Center, and he did a wonderful job of walking us through the Zendo. And he pointed like, this person brought this wood and did this woodwork, and then that person did this carving, and then this person did this calligraphy. And you just saw, like, over all the years, all the different people that came and contributed to making this temple and this practice. And so that to me is an example of how it's completely interconnected and interrelated, and all these people, it took all these people and all these beings together to create this beautiful temple and this beautiful practice. And so I think that, in a way of thinking about it that way, that it's not like any one of us, but all of us together creating this beautiful world together, that helps me to come back into the present and remember, like stop separating, and just remember that we're all creating this together. And thank you very much for everything.
So just to continue with that line of thinking, Not only is the temple made by all of those people and all of the wood and the natural materials and so on and so forth, it's made of all of those things other than, like, there's no temple. There's all of that, but there's actually no temple. And this is what the Diamond Sutra is speaking to here. And if we can remember, we can love and say yes to the temple and care for the temple and be so appreciative of the temple. But remember the no, there is no temple. There's only everything other than temple. Then if an earthquake comes and it falls down, we can just go, oh, damn. Shall we build again or not? Let's work out what to do next. But we don't get mortified. We don't have to collapse because there was no temple. This is the particular point from today's talk that I'm wanting to sort of work with for myself, is really to see that piece. It's made of everything other than the temple. The temple is the appearance, and we care for it. That's the yes part. But there's actually no temple. I think we have time for maybe one more question or comment. Carol. Seem to still be on mute.
Sorry. It's very slippery. It's hard for me to hold on to what I want to say because it's so, yeah. But what you just said about if there's an earthquake and it falls down, and we don't have to, whatever you said, we don't have to do. We just determine, oh, well, do we rebuild or not? We do what needs to happen next. It made me think about death and what we do when someone dies. Or I die, maybe I die. That's a better example. What was the word you said we don't do when the temple falls down?
I'm not sure. I don't really remember.
It was great. It was a great word. And it's
mortify. Get
mortified.
Thank you, Phil. It really stimulated this line of contemplation about death and disappearance and dying.
But one thing I didn't say just then, but I nearly added after I said mortified, is it doesn't mean we don't weep. You know, part of the yes towards all the appearances of the world is that our heart gets broken. You know, is that we feel lost. We feel lost, but there is a way to weep without being mortified. There's a way to weep without collapsing and crumbling and holding on. There's a way to grieve without clinging. And I think that grieving without clinging is the exact yes and the no dancing together. The weeping is the yes. The not collapsing is, the not grasping and clinging is the no. The realizing that whatever it is that we're weeping over is made up of everything other than itself. And because of that, it never disappears. None of us ever disappear. We're always here, expressed in everything all the time. Because everything is made up of everything other than itself. So it's hard to put this into words, but
Yeah.
That's the yes and the no together. We weep, but we don't cling. It's not easy practice, you know.
No.
But it's easier than weeping and clinging. It just takes us a while to shed our delusions to get there, but it's worth all the It's worth all the practice to get there, worth all the contemplation. And it's not like we're not there and then we're there. It's a gradual shedding of delusion, so that just the natural wisdom just naturally is there. It's like it's just revealed. The connectedness is just revealed. It's already there. We just shed the thin veils of delusion over time.
Yes, thank you very much, Nettie. That was deep for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think maybe Phil, do you guide us in the finishing? Or Gregory?
So we're gonna wrap up here. Could we all unmute and give Nettie the common Western response to a great talk, which is a and then yeah, there we go too. I love that one too. And then a nice bow for the Dharma and the way that it touches us. And you know, there's that old phrase: the Dharma is good in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. And you know, so here we are in the beginning, in the middle, and the end, and the Dharma is very good. And so we'll pass to Phil or pass to Gregory at this point to kind of guide us to whatever.
Give me a second to pull up my my thing.
If there are any more additions or changes to the dedication lists?
Yeah, Jerry needs to go on the death list. Jerry Adamovitz.
Yeah,
Has-
Bill gave me that note.
Okay,
Thank-
great.
I'll probably have a few to come off next week, but I don't have any now. Anybody have someone else?
Thanks.
And I want to say we have a wonderful talk coming up next week. Our soon-to-be Roshi Eggert, Katie will be offering some talk next week on her practice and whatever is alive, maybe on secular work with her, or maybe on other things. After that, we have other Dharma talks coming, or other way-seeking mind talks coming up. I believe Carol is soon after that, and I don't have the list in front of me. But on January 27th, we'll be starting a Dharma class on very important sutra that is foundational to Zen in many ways. I'll pass to Gregory to share on that, and then we'll do it.
It's a treatise, not a sutra, but it is very important and had a big influence in China in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th centuries. And it's the treatise on the arousing of faith, the Mahayana arousing of faith, or earlier translators translated the awakening of faith. 8 Thursdays, and talk about that treatise, focusing on my translation, and then showing the outline of the treatise and how it teaches the Mahayana perspective on faith and mind.
And I would say it's very rare in the West to have somebody in a Sangha who has the level of expertise, skill, and facility with sutras that Gregory does, and the depth of practice to back it up. It's worth hanging out with him. And the intellectual and spiritual rigor is beautiful. So I hope to see you all there.
One thing I thought was interesting, I'm just about ready to put it up. The word contemplate, I think it literally means to be with the space. So I always think of it that way when I hear it. It's just to join in the space. If I'm contemplating a thing as thingness, then it's really the space of the thing, which is another way of saying what Nettie was saying in terms of the space is what's not the thing, but it's because of the space that the thing is there. Okay, what happened here? Oh, that's the wrong one. Excuse me, I got the wrong one up. Mm.
There's the online event page is in the chat as well, if you want to go and check it out.
A great Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva practicing deep prajna paramita clearly saw that all five skandhas are empty, transforming all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness, no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness, emptiness, exactly form. Sensation, perception, mental reaction, consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all things are essentially empty, not born, not destroyed, not stained, not pure, without loss, without gain. Therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no sensation, perception, mental reaction, consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no color, sound, smell, taste, touch, object of thought, no seeing, and so on to no thinking, no ignorance, and also no ending of ignorance, and so on to no old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death, no suffering, cause of suffering, cessation path, no wisdom, and no attainment. Since there is nothing to attain, the Bodhisattva lives by prajna paramita, with no hindrance in the mind, no hindrance, and therefore no fear, far beyond elusive thinking. Right here is nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future live by prajna paramita, attaining anuttara samyak sambodhi. Therefore know that prajna paramita is the great sacred mantra, the great vivid mantra, the unsurpassed mantra, the supreme mantra, which completely removes all suffering. This is truth, not mere formality. Therefore set forth the prajna paramita mantra. Set forth this mantra and proclaim gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisattva. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now. Whenever we send forth these invocations, they are perceived and subtly answered. We give thanks to Shakyamuni Buddha, Daisho, to all our ancestors, and to the unknown, unnamed women. May we wake up to our true nature, together with redwoods and salmon, and the many beings of the world. We dedicate our sutras and our zazen to those who are sick. Maggie, Marina, Ryder, Steve and his parents, Norm and Denise, Tim and Jennifer, Jerry Bell, Doug Bryce, Jeff Chan, Henry Changaris, James Changaris, John Changaris, Abby Kunkin, Finnegan Greenman, Anne Marie Harrington, Emmett Harrington, Ishan Haven, Ruth Heel, Brian Johnson, John Ole, Janchub Punchak, Brooke Rowland, Ed Solt, Carolyn Stevens, Daniel Terrano, Len Tron, Lynn Tuttle, Temre Uzunchan, Gregory Wonderwheel. May you be whole. And we dedicate the merits to those who have recently died. Patty's sister, Jerry Adamovitz, Rosario Alemparte, Mary Eggert, Johnny Gunella, Bell Hooks, Barbara Len Schmidt, Don McCorkle, Desmond Tutu, Wendy. May you rest in deepest samadhi. May we dispel greed, hatred, and ignorance as we practice, realize, and manifest the enlightened way together. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. The four great vows. The many beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. The Buddha way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. The many beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. The Buddha way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. The many beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. The Buddha way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it.